there, Michelle here from Shell McQuaid TV. We're helping you find ways to move from functioning to flourishing by putting the latest science to the real world test. Now today I feel very privileged to be able to introduce you to one of my dear colleagues, Shannon Polly. Shannon is a leadership consultant, facilitator, speaker and coach. She's earned her Masters of Applied Positive Psychology degree and translates her decade-long professional acting career into training that engages employees and helps them leverage their strengths for higher performance. Specialising in increasing well-being and performance in the workplace, Shannon's facilitated for the US Army's Master Resilience Training Program, where she's trained over 1,000 Army sergeants in psychological resilience. She's also served as an assistant instructor in the MAP program at the University of Pennsylvania and lectured at the University of Delaware, West Point, Columbia Business School and Wharton Business School. She's been published in the International Appreciative Inquiry journals, is a contributor to Positive Psychology at Work, authored a chapter in the European Handbook of Positive Psychology, and is the co-editor of a forthcoming book on the VIA Strength Survey. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Michelle, from around the world. Here we are.
Shannon, one of the things that always fascinated me from the first time I met you was your own personal presence and the way you pack that for positivity and for impact. But I know now it's something that you teach many other people in organisations to do. So exactly what is a positive presence and why does it matter so much in our work?
Well, having a positive presence is being aware of the impact that you have on the people in the room. And there's a lot of research about how our nonverbals have a huge impact on how we're perceived. And usually when we're preparing meetings or presentations, we spend 99% of the time on the content and maybe 1% on, do I have my lipstick on and what jacket am I going to wear? In an NYU research study, they found that in the first 7 seconds of meeting you, people make 11 judgments about you. 7-11 rule. So you want to be in control of what are those things that people are perceiving, and how can you have a flourishing somatic impact? How can you be the biggest, most powerful presence you can be?
So what do you suggest? Well, number one, I think, what are those 11 impacts? I'm worried now what people are taking away in those first 7 seconds.
Right. Well, some of it is age, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, sexual attractiveness, those sorts of criteria. At the same time, people pick up on, from a handshake, they pick up on intention and warmth and safety, and does someone feel comfortable with you? So when you get that limp fish, clammy handshake, your first impression is not, oh gee, I'd love to do business with this person.
So is safety the goal of creating this positive presence, that other people would feel safe with us to be able to hear our message, or is it something else we're trying to achieve?
I think that's part of it. I think it depends on what your goal is or your intention. In theater, we talk about a super objective. So every character in a play has an objective of something they want to accomplish. For Juliet, it might be to control my own destiny. And everything she does in the play falls under that. She defies her parents, she goes after Romeo, she pretends she's dead, all of those things. So for us in business, it depends on what's your intention. Is your intention to inspire? Is your intention to educate? Is your intention to comfort if it's a difficult situation at work? So it really depends on the situation you're in.
So once we're clearer on our intention, I think your point at the start there is so true. We spend so much time thinking about the content, but not a lot on the delivery. So I guess getting clear on our intention, number one, is a good starting place. But what do we do next then to actually channel that intention into the way our bodies, our voices, all of us are showing up in the room, not just the content we're taking?
Well, part of it comes from being relaxed. And as you probably know, fear of public speaking is bigger than a fear of death in most people. So how can you calm down that nervous system before you go in? And there are a whole host of techniques that I've learned in my years as a professional actor and Broadway producer on how to do that. And first, it comes down to breathing. Breathing is really the center of everything. It calms down your heart rate. It lowers your actual vocal tone. So I coach a lot of women who maybe have really high-pitched voices, and it's difficult to come across as powerful and in control when you sound like this. So breathing is really the key focus of it, and I know there are yoga practices and all sorts of ways you can get at getting more centered breathing.
And then what about in terms of, so that's great with voice, what about the rest of us? You know, should arms be flowing? Should they be still? What do you recommend? How does that convey positive presence?
That's a great question, and one I get a lot. I usually think of a batter's box. So from your shoulders out to your hips and then down to your waist, if you think of that as your batter's box, then normal gestures for normal speech would flow from there and be authentic. I don't prescribe anything like you must stand with your hands in the choir position. That being said, if you're talking about a company and you just won a $3 million project, it's okay to go outside of your batter's box. So that's one of the general rules I stick to.
And so are there any other tips? So we've sort of talked about that intention, the voice, the batter's box is a really helpful way to think about it. When you're helping people in workplaces bring this more positive presence in, is there anything else you really recommend people focus on?
Well, one interesting piece of research from psychology is around feedback. And when people who are learning something for the first time, namely bowlers in this study by Daniel Kirschenbaum, when bowlers were watching video of themselves, half of them watched what they did well and they wanted to repeat it, and half of them focused on what they needed to fix. And the bowlers that focused on what they did well performed 100% better than the ones that focused on what they needed to fix. So I use a lot of positive reinforcement on things people need to keep doing. That being said, if I see someone who's really a high performer, the research also shows that someone like Tiger Woods, you don't need to shower him with positive praise. You can give very specific, deliberate feedback, and they call it deliberate practice. So he can focus on just the putt. So if that was a speaker, it might be, where does my eye contact go on this sentence, and when do I pause? So it really varies based on the experience of the person speaking.
So I know it's a subject close to both of our hearts about being able to spot our strengths and build on them. But what I'm hearing there is that sense of figuring out kind of what works for you and where you are able to connect with people in an authentic way. And while you're learning, maybe channeling more of that. And then as you reach that level of mastery, maybe fine-tuning some of those pieces that maybe aren't as strong for you, but you now have capacity to go there. Is that right?
That's a great summation. And the thing I would add is that I often get the authenticity question of, but that's just not who I am. And I say, well, we're all sorts of different characters. If you think of the roles we play in our lives, I'm a different person with my 2-year-old daughter than I am with my boss, than I am with my husband, than I am on the street corner with a friend. So I play different roles, and I wouldn't go up to my boss and say, oh, you look so cute today, your tie is so cute, right? We play different roles. So there is a way of being who you are and who you are becoming at the same time. And we let children do that, but we as adults sort of got that stamped out, like we need to follow the rules. And so what I'd like to encourage people to do is try on a new role. Try on something different. And I think we often confuse discomfort with inauthenticity. So you have to check in with yourself, but also maybe check in with a friend or someone who's in the meeting with you to say, how did that land? I was trying a stronger voice. How did that work?
So what I'm hearing also is the fake it till you make it is probably not something you would recommend. Is that right, when it comes to positive presence?
I think it's commonly misunderstood, and it's more subtle than that. So it's trying on new things that align with what your intention is.
And Shannon, I know there's been some recent research, and I do a lot with women and confidence. And I think, for women, that public speaking piece, even in a meeting, never mind in front of a presentation room, we really see that lack of confidence that a lot of women suffer from in action. And so one of the exercises, and I think perhaps it's bringing together those tips you're sharing with us, but that sense of intention, the breathing, the kind of moving into our body, being more mindful and aware of it, is the Wonder Woman kind of meditation pose where they strike that Wonder Woman pose and for 2 minutes breathe. Is that a technique that you see actually works for people, or is it a bit more of an urban myth that this is something we should be trying?
Well, Amy Cuddy did some great research at Harvard on that, her power poses. The distinction I would make is that you do the pose before you have the interview or the meeting, not while you're in the meeting.
That's a good tip.
And I actually have seen it work. I was coaching a guy who had a BBC interview that was going to air to 4 million people. And anecdotally, he said, I did my, and he's male, was willing to try it on. I did my power poses in the car on the way there, and I felt more confident. And he said maybe it was, placebo effect, but it still worked for me. And he continued to use them. So in everyone I've worked with, they have found them to be useful.
I know when having trained women and shared, Amy Cuddy, of course, has that wonderful TED Talk where she describes some of the research you're touching on. And they've gone back to the office and tried it the next day before a meeting in the bathroom stall and then gone in and nailed the meeting and felt more confident. And so they've gone back and they've put a poster on all the bathroom stalls in the women's toilets to share the Wonder Woman pose, because they thought this was something they should give to other women to help improve their confidence. So I have this vision now of about 10 to 9 each morning, women around Melbourne going into the bathrooms and striking their Wonder Woman pose. But I loved it because it was such a simple intervention in terms of many of the techniques that you're recommending as well, to just give us some of that confidence to be more aware and attuned to our body and our intention, so that when we carry ourselves into those situations, we've kind of invested enough in ourselves as well as the content to really be able to deliver it and get the results that we want. Shannon, thank you so much for sharing your tips with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
If you're wanting to discover more on Shannon's wonderful work, then stop by her website and sign up for the Positive Storytelling video at shannonpolly.com. Shannon's also been instrumental in helping set up Positive Business DC, which is a meetup that helps people explore ways to apply positive psychology in workplaces. You can join it at meetup.com/Positive Business DC. And of course, if you're looking for more tested, practical and playful ways you can move from functioning to flourishing at work, then head on over to michellmcquaid.com, leave your name and email address so you can hear all our news first. Remember, you are good enough, so don't be afraid to let your strengths shine. Until next time, take care.